Welcome back. I'm Roger. In this video, I'm going to be talking about research best practices, avoiding common pitfalls. And guess what? This is video 9 in a 10-part series looking at research, writing research papers. Now, it is really directed in particular to those persons who may be sitting the Cape Entrepreneurship examination. Cape is an examination in the Caribbean region. Now, this video, though it is a part of a series, targeting those persons doing Cape Entrepreneurship, it certainly is applicable to those persons who may be doing a research in general. All right, as you will find that other videos in the series will assist you in doing your general research. All right, so let's jump right into the video. Now, things that you want to avoid when you are doing your research paper. The first one is you want to avoid not clearly defining the research question or problem. So in other words, ensure that you clearly define your research question or your problems, your aims, your objectives. Now, failure to do so will mean that it will impact how you do the research, the information gathered, and of course your conclusion. Additionally, you want to ensure that you have adequately reviewed existing literature, and this now with where now you would use this literature for your literature review. And to do our research paper without literature review is really it is really grossly inadequate. It is not something that is expected. All right, so you want to avoid not reviewing existing literature and avoid and utilizing that information in your research paper. Now, failing to review existing literature can lead to repeated work that has already been done, missing important findings or context, or not being aware of gaps in current understanding of the topic. Now, in addition to that, I should say that not using literature review in our research really reduces the quality it diminishes the quality of the research. Thirdly, you want to avoid not using appropriate research methods. So there's no way you can actually do a research without using a method. So the method would really speak to how you go about collecting the data. So whether you are doing an interview or you are observing, and things like those. Doing conducting tests. So you have to have a method. You have to employ a method when you are doing your research. Now, fourthly, you want to avoid not collecting enough data. So you want to ensure that you're collecting an adequate amount of data, which will enable you to be able to properly assess, to properly evaluate and analyze, and to come to some reasonable conclusion. Where the Cape Entrepreneurship students are concerned, I should emphasize that the data collection method, prescribed for the Unit 1 cohort is interview. So you have to use an interview. You have to use an interview, or you have to conduct an interview rather of an entrepreneur. Now, bear in mind that when you're doing your interview, the interview questions should be based on all three modules of the Unit 1 course. So you're looking at the entrepreneurial process, the entrepreneurial mindset, you're looking at creativity and innovation. So your question should span all of those three areas, and including the entrepreneurial process, because you want to make sure that when you create your aim, you create your objectives from your aim, and you create your questions, your interview questions from your objectives. So you want to use that pattern. You want to plan it properly and make sure that you having there enough questions to put to the interviewee, so that you will be able to adequately conclude on your research, and of course achieve the guidelines as outlined by your examining board. Next, you want to avoid not analyzing data properly. Here, in your data analysis, you'll be using, most likely charts or tables. So having collected the responses, you would plug them into, one of these, or, you'd utilize different tools to analyze the data. So you want to make sure that you are adequately summarizing, analyzing, and representing what has been discovered. Also, you want to make sure that you interpret the results correctly and that you draw the correct conclusions so that you can make the appropriate recommendations in your conclusion. Also, you want to make sure that there are ethical considerations when you're doing your research. So, ensure that you have the consent of the interviewee to record, for instance, do an audio recording of the interview if you're doing an interview. Ensure too that you are keeping the data collected private and confidential. Also, you want to make sure that you are properly documenting the research process so as you go along, because for instance, typically in a research paper, when doing a research, one of the elements that is required is limitations. So you have to speak about limitations, anything that may have inhibited you, prevented you from being able to adequately complete the research paper. So for instance, it may be limitation may be inadequate funding. Limitation may be that we probably have some global pandemic. It could be anything. All right. So you want to document as you go along, because bear in mind that the research may have been conducted over a period of time. You may not, or you may not want to rely upon your memory to be able to recall everything. So as you go along, make sure that you have, for instance, like a notebook, and that you're documenting everything that comes up or, is implicated in your research there. Right? So you want to keep adequate records of data collection, especially data collection and your analysis procedures, because again, you may find that depending on who you're doing the research for, they may want to scrutinize the methods that you employed to do the research, because you know that this can also impact the quality of your research. It can also impact how persons perceive and receive your research. Also, it is important to ensure that you are doing consultations, so you have that person who is a research expert, for instance, or your instructor, who you are liaising, you're interacting with regularly, and who you are reaching out to in situations for clarification and so forth. So you want to ensure that you're doing that and that you're revising aspects of your research as you go along, things like your research questions, your methods and so forth. Because you want to get everything right, because if, for instance, your research questions are not appropriately structured, this definitely will impact the quality of the data that you would have collected. All right. So that is really looking at research best practices and things to avoid when doing your research.